Today we're going to talk about a situation where you decide that you don't want to move on from your ex. You want to try to get them back. And you're sitting there and wondering, what should you do to give you the best chance of success? So probably the first thing that we should talk about here is even if it's okay to not want to move on from an ex. Now, I probably know this better than anyone since we deal with a lot of situations where our clients are trying to get their exes back. There's a certain negative stigma that always sort of is attached to this concept of trying to get an ex back. Oftentimes when you confront friends or family with the idea of, hey, I'm thinking of getting so-and-so back or trying to get things started again, you'll not be met with a lot of support. Instead, you'll hear common phrases like, hey, an ex is an ex for a reason, don't try to get them back. Or why would you ever want to try to get this person back? Or my personal favorite, there's more fish in the sea. But the honest truth of the matter is that I find a lot of the people who are giving you this type of feedback have never been put in a position themselves where they've ever wanted to get an ex back. Or you can make the argument, a lot of them have very negative experiences when they go through a breakup, but they're projecting those experiences onto your situation. Every single situation is unique, and this is coming from someone who's seen a lot of different situations. In some cases, you should be trying to get an ex back if you think that's the right thing to do. And in other cases, you should never be trying to get your ex back, even if you think that's the right thing to do. So probably my best piece of advice is to actually look at one of my more recent videos that I've done with regards to red flags on not trying to get an ex back. Essentially, we outline, hey, these are the situations where we do not agree with trying to get exes back. So assuming you go through that video and you watch all of the red flags that I outlined there and you are not on that video, yeah, it's okay to not be able to move on from an ex, to try to get them back. Even if your friends or family don't support that, you need to do what's best for you. And now we arrive to the million-dollar question. What should you do if you decide you don't want to move on from your ex? Hey there, real quick, I want to say that if you're new to this YouTube channel or you're trying to figure out what you should be doing to get your ex back and you're trying to learn if you even have a chance in your specific circumstance, probably the smartest thing for you to do is actually stop by our website, www.exboyfriendrecovery.com, or take our Ex Recovery Chances quiz that can be found at exboyfriendrecovery.com. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, taking that free quiz is super easy to do. All you have to simply do is look in the description link below this YouTube video and click on the link you see there. It will take you directly to the quiz where you can fill it out and get an easy answer on what you should be doing going forward and overall what your chances look like in your specific situation. All right, so let's get you back to the video. Well, this is kind of where things get really interesting. I've always looked at ex-boyfriend recovery or ex-girlfriend recovery or the ex recovery program that we've created as this living and breathing entity that's always evolving based on new information. So a lot of the advice that we give out now is different from the advice that we gave out at the beginning of when I started this business. Why? Well, we've learned through real life research, through learning more from other psychologists or psychotherapists, what's actually working to achieve our clients' goals. And what's interesting is at the beginning, a lot of the trying to get an ex back and trying to move on from an ex is the same. And it all really revolves around the concept of the no contact rule. So imagine this. The no contact rule is essentially the foundation upon which you should be basing everything after a breakup, which is a very controversial thing to say because a lot of people want to stay friends with their ex. Some people have to stay friends with their ex because they share children together or they live together or they work together. They need to have some sort of cordial relationship. So it can be controversial to say, hey, even if you're trying to move on from an ex, you should start with a no contact rule. But that's what we found to be the most successful entity or strategy on the onset. So essentially, the first step that you take when you're trying to get an ex back and trying to move on from an ex is the no contact rule. But how you feel at the end of the no contact rule will determine what steps you take next. So allow me to explain. The no contact rule has gone through many different variations ever since I started ex-boyfriend recovery and ex-girlfriend recovery. At first, it was simply just a 30-day rule where you ignore your ex no matter what. And then after we basically learned and got feedback from people, we realized, hey, this no contact rule doesn't really answer how to handle situations if you live with an ex, how to handle situations if you share a kid with your ex. Those kind of situations force interactions. What are the rules there? So we quickly adapted and learned about the limited no contact rule. And then we've often found situations where, hey, you're better off just never speaking to your ex again. Then we added in the indefinite no contact rule. But ultimately, the biggest change we've ever made to the no contact rule has to do with the intent of the no contact rule. So everyone knows the no contact rule as this sort of playing hard to get strategy where you ignore your ex no matter what. If they text, call, even if they try to show up on your doorstep, you just ignore them. But we've actually found that that's not the important part of the no contact rule. The important part of the no contact rule is to get you out of the tunnel vision of trying to get an ex back and put your tunnel vision on yourself. Now, that's super cliche, but think of it like this. The intent of someone who's trying to put the attention on themselves versus on their exes is going to have a lot more success in sort of rebuilding their life during the no contact rule, because we all know it's like your ex takes a sledgehammer to all aspects of your life after a breakup. It affects everything you do. You watching this probably know this better than anyone because you're having trouble concentrating at work, you're having trouble sleeping, you're having trouble eating, all very common symptoms of going through a breakup. But the most important thing to do during the no contact rule is not only ignoring your ex, but also putting the focus on yourself so that you almost let them go a little bit. You actually begin to take care of yourself. Now, it's obviously a lot more complicated than that. It's not simply just like, hey, I'll ignore my ex for this amount of time, and then all of a sudden I'll put all this focus on myself and quote unquote let go of my ex. So it's obviously not that simple. But what I will say is that a 5 to 10 minute video like we're doing here is not going to give you everything you need to know about the no contact rule. I actually just got done writing a 16,000 word post on the no contact rule, basically everything I could imagine, every situation I could think of, every question we get about the no contact rule. I do my very best to answer in the no contact rule guide on ex-boyfriend recovery. I highly recommend you check that out if you want kind of an ultimate primer on how we view the no contact rule and what's actually working and trying to get exes back with it. So essentially, if you think about it, if you kind of pull back and look at this from a macro standpoint, the no contact rule serves as the first building block to everything that you're going to do. The work you put in during the no contact rule will help you determine as your no contact rule ends if you want your ex back or you want to get over them. We find that a lot of our clients who really take what we say to heart, really use the no contact rule to quote unquote let go, don't want their exes back after the no contact rule ends, and then life is pretty simple. The clients who do want their ex back have to do a lot of extra steps. And for that, we need to explain the difference between the value ladder and the value chain. So the value ladder and the value chain are essentially the core components that make up our program. It's basically the step-by-step quick guide to getting an ex back. So what is the value ladder, or at least the concept of it? Well, the value ladder basically refers to the methods in which you will communicate with your ex. So imagine this, your first step always is going to be a no contact rule. The next step after that should be texting, since it's not that invasive and it allows you to have time to think, it allows your ex to have time to think, you can kind of build rapport. Or to stick with the value ladder terminology, you build value during the texting phase. After you've built enough value on the texting phase, you advance up to the next rung of the ladder, which is phone conversations, FaceTime, video chat, Zoom, anything you can think of that gives you more of an emphasis than texting. Texting is just almost like an email, back and forth, back and forth. Talking on the phone is a lot different. You can hear their tone of voice. You can hear how quick they are, if they mean what they're saying, just through all of these social cues that you can pick up. So what do you do there? Well, you continue texting and building value there, but once you've moved up to the phone call portion, you introduce phone calls into the mix and you build value there. Now, once enough value has been built up, that's when you try for the in-person interactions. And of course, you build value there. Once you've built enough value there, guess what happens? That's when you try to go for a commitment. Now, that's a super, super quick way of explaining, like, this is sort of the general game plan that we found works the best. But we also learned coupling that value ladder concept with the value chain skyrockets your chances of success. So what is the value chain? So the best terminology or the best analogy I can think to describe the difference between the value ladder and the value chain is the value ladder is almost like you're climbing a ladder, and at the top, you get your X back. So each step you take, you're getting closer to the top of that ladder and getting your X back. The value chain in and of itself are the exact rungs of the ladder. Specifically, they are the types of conversations you'll be having with your ex. So periodically, as you're moving up the value ladder, you're gonna be having more and more intense and meaningful conversations. So in all, there are actually more conversations in this, but we try to keep things super simple for our clients because there's already so much information overload. But there's 5 different types of conversations that you can have. So what are those 5 conversations? Well, you have small talk, which is the type of conversations you can have with someone on a train or someone on a bus or someone as you're ordering food. You're just like, hey, what's up? Oh man, the weather is crazy. That's an example of small talk. You typically do this not even with acquaintances, but with strangers. Then we move up to telling stories. Now this is kind of interesting because telling stories we usually only do with people that we know or are slightly acquainted with. We can also do it with our loved ones and things like that, but I'm looking at the entry level type conversation you'll be having with the person. So telling stories is just like it sounds. You tell a story that gets the person engaged and boom, they like you more. Next, we have sharing opinions. Now, sharing opinions is something you usually only reserve for friends because you know they're not going to leave you for however you voted in the election, or basically any type of controversial opinion you may put forth that you're embarrassed for other people to know your business about. Again, you reserve this for friends typically. And the cool part about all of this concept is you're kind of weaving them in as you're climbing the ladder. Now, how you do that is a much more complicated procedure that you're gonna have to do research on your own to figure out, but I'm giving you kind of the general lay of the land here. So after you've done those 3 types of conversations, what's next? Well, this is where we hit the virgin territory, virgin ground. You start telling your ex things, or they start telling you things that they've never told anyone before. It is the ultimate sign of trust. Oftentimes you'll hear like, you know, I don't tell this to a lot of people, or I've never said that to anyone before. Those are good signs. It's a good sign that you are treading on virgin ground. And then finally, after you have done those 4 types of conversations, then you share your feelings. Now, it doesn't ever work out in a perfect world where you climb that ladder and weave those rungs in, but generally speaking, if you use that template to try to get an ex back, or when you decide you don't want to move on from them, you use this template, it gives you the best chance of success. All right, thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. If you've already decided that you don't want to move on from your ex and you think trying to get them back is what you want to do, my first recommendation for you would always be to take our Ex Recovery Chances quiz. It's a simple, free 2-minute quiz designed to basically tell you what kind of chance you have of getting your ex back and giving you some next steps to accomplish that goal. Also, if you haven't liked, commented, or subscribed to our YouTube channel, or even just left a comment below, do so. We love when you guys do that. I'll see you next time.